Okay, so you have to know I am not afraid to go after Democrats. And I want you to strap in because this does take on someone who could be one of the favorites to be in a position to clean up Donald Trump's mess when he finally leaves office. And I will preface this by saying anyone who comes in and puts our country back together is welcome in my book. That said, it's just not in my blood to just accept someone because they have a D behind their name. And right now, I want to take on Gavin Newsom because he has spent this entire term being very good, actually not just very good, expert level at fighting Donald Trump on camera. He is the best out there. And in this climate, that's worth a whole hell of a lot. When Trump federalized troops into California, Newsom went after him. When Trump came after the state, Newsom came back. He trolls him online. He beats him in press conferences. He doesn't flinch. And he has some pretty good fundraising ideas out there that are based on his Trump attacks. There's real skill. And most of the Democratic Party doesn't come close to matching it. But I want to talk about Gavin Newsom off camera and as governor, because the Wall Street Journal reports that Newsom has privately expressed concerns about California's own antitrust lawsuit, the one that his own Attorney General, Rob Bonta, has filed. And he's now encouraged his state to settle. The lawsuit is against Paramount, and it would block its $111 billion takeover of Warner Brothers Discovery. It has at least pushed that merger back a year. And remember, Paramount is David Ellison. David Ellison, a Trump ally. Paramount already owns CBS News, that network where a blogger with zero broadcast experience was handed the keys, and they've seen their ratings and integrity tank. And if this Paramount merger closes, that same company will also own CNN. So it will most certainly happen there too. Hell, just 2 weeks ago, at the podium at the Pentagon, the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said out loud that the sooner David Ellison takes over CNN, the better. And that is why it is crucial to stop this deal. And that is why we were all thrilled at the success that California's AG has had in this lawsuit. So what is Newsom complaining about? Now he says it's jobs. And look, California employment, if this deal dies, could be impacted. It could be a legitimate thing for a governor to worry about, especially since entertainment work has been fleeing California for a decade. And Newsom is right to worry about all of that. But let's not pretend Newsom isn't in the club. We do know that he and Ellison have met privately in Los Angeles at least once, at least. And remember, Newsom is not just a governor. Right now, he is a guy out there with that exploratory glow. And look, in the comments section, I've got to ask you, how hard should we go after our own side in this current climate? We saw what happened with Kamala. But is it our duty to move toward the centrist candidate, or is it the DNC that needs to come to where the people are? And before you answer that, I want you to see the centrist option up close. Because for progressives, the Paramount thing isn't a one-off with Gavin. Look at the podcast. He started it in 2024. He launched This is Gavin Newsom. And his first big bookings weren't nurses, weren't organizers, weren't anybody who ever knocked a door for him. He brought on Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, Michael Savage, and he called it dialogue. But it seemed a lot more like platforming. Because on his very first episode, talking to Charlie Kirk, Newsom volunteered that trans athletes in women's sports is, quote, deeply unfair. And then he went on to say, I am not wrestling with the fairness issue. I totally agree with you, to Charlie Kirk. This is the same guy who told trans kids in 2022, quote, they are heroes. But then I guess the polling shifted and one of the smallest, most targeted groups in America got sold out. Then you see what he does with his veto pen. 2023, the summer that half of Hollywood was on a picket line. Writers, actors, all the same entertainment workers he claims to be protecting. A bill lands on his desk that would give striking workers unemployment benefits. He vetoed it. So when Gavin Newsom says that he's worried about California entertainment jobs, be sure to ask him which jobs. And also ask him which countries he's taking money from, right? Little APAC out there. And look, this guy ran for governor in 2018 promising single-payer health care. That bill showed up in the legislature. And Gavin Newsom went silent. And that bill died. And then after the Supreme Court cleared the way, he didn't just allow homeless encampment sweeps in his state. He ordered his state agencies to start clearing homeless camps. And then he pushed for the cities to follow. In a state with roughly half the unsheltered homeless people in America, his fix was to just tell them to go somewhere else. And I get the public safety issues, but you can't do that without a real safety net. Where is the safety net, Gavin? Now, Newsom did, to his credit, also release 4 years of tax returns this week, 700 pages of them. I think he's being a little extra transparent ahead of an obvious run. And he and his wife pulled in about $1.7 to $2 million a year, paid about $500,000 in taxes, most of his income coming from his plump jack wineries and restaurants that are sitting in a blind trust that is run by his sister and cousin. And look, after 4 years of Donald Trump running a stock account through his own children while pumping tickers on his platform that he owns, a Democrat voluntarily handing over their 700-page tax return feels like a different planet. So credit where credit is due. And again, I'm hoping that the Gavin Newsom we see in the lead up to 2028 might start talking to the progressive wing. But right now, we need to talk about the rest of the party. Because Newsom, he is a microcosm of what's going on in the DNC. Politico reporting that major Democratic donors are, in their words, really anxious about 2028. More than half a dozen donors and bundlers, staying anonymous so they could actually talk, say that they have lost trust in the DNC. One said that it was sort of floundering. Another said that it was, quote, beyond embarrassing and it's not going to get better until he's gone, end quote. He being Ken Martin, the chair. And right now, in the lead up to midterms, the DNC is $2 million in debt. The Republican National Committee has $128.5 million on hand in cash. Trump personally controls a $400 million super PAC. And yet this is the same DNC that sat on its own 2024 autopsy for an entire year. I covered that. And when it finally came out, it was so poorly sourced that the chairman had to effectively disavow the report that he commissioned. It was also reported that he threw a phone toward a junior aide's desk that generated an HR complaint. The people that work for him were shaken. So look, our party, the DNC, the National Committee, is broken. And it's broke. Its own chairman is disavowing his own homework and throwing tantrums. And donors are routing money around the DNC entirely. And the front runner right now, along with Kamala, is quietly asking California to go easy on the right-winger that wants to take over CNN. And look, I will vote Democrat in November. I will in 2028. I'll say it plainly because the alternative is, well, this. But I am not going to pretend that everything's fine. And I'm going to keep pushing and fighting for progressive ideals that will actually fix things in this country. And that's why it's important for independent media like us to stay ahead of this. And we survive by your interactions, your likes, your comments, your shares, hitting that notification icon. Because, look, some of our own side will get mad at me for putting out videos like this. But if you want accountability on either side of the aisle, that's where I need your help. And if you really support what we do, I would really appreciate you considering becoming a member, because that will help make sure we keep putting out content that calls out both sides so that we can have the country we all deserve.